Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining what should be a very, very rewarding conversation this morning. We are tackling xenophobia, not only in South Africa, but across Africa. It continues to be a very complex and, yes, sensitive issue that warrants meaningful discussion like this. I'm going to say it straight off the beginning. I am triggered by this. There is something about this conversation that really does trigger me, and I think a lot of people are likewise triggered. Xenophobia refers to the fear, the hatred, the prejudice against foreigners or people from different countries. What fuels that? We will try and put our fingers on that this morning, along with Leletu Nogwavu from Africa Unite, who joins us to discuss where we are right now with xenophobia in South Africa. Leletu, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you know what? Like you said, this is a very sensitive conversation, but let's quickly unpack. As a state, South Africa, where are we when it comes to xenophobia? At one stage, it was every headline in the newspaper. Now it's semi-quieted down and then it flares up, but where are we currently?
I think we still have a long way to go. I think because it's not there out in the media, it doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even if they show it, even if they don't, it's still out there. So we still have a very long way to go. We still have to educate ourselves. We still have to unlearn a lot. Yeah, so I'd say, yeah, there's a lot to do, a lot of work.
You face this deluge. When we talk about the role that the news plays in this story, like so many other stories concerning what feels like the baggage that we drag around with us continentally, certainly as a country, it's easy to paint it with one brush, to try to understand it. For me, it's desperation.
Yeah.
There could be other factors that I just don't see. You have a front row seat to this narrative as it unfolds. What drives xenophobia in South Africa? What do you think are those major contributing factors?
I think you've hit the nail in the head, really. It's actually desperation. So because we have a lot of issues in the country, we face unemployment, we face, load shedding and a lot of other things. So it's easier to have someone to blame for that. We're looking for a scapegoat constantly, but we don't know actually that the actual issue is our government and not actually foreign nationals. So we usually then just take all of that desperation and that hatred and that energy and we put it towards migrants. But really, they are not the problem. We need to look into ourselves, look into our government and actually face the actual issue and come up with solutions for that.
Everyone's just surviving.
Exactly.
Everyone is just surviving, or at least trying to.
Yeah.
Definitely, and so are the immigrants and the refugees that end up in South Africa. What impact does xenophobia have on their rights?
You see, the thing is, if especially you look at it on a human rights perspective, is that a lot of their human rights are violated through xenophobia. So we see it manifest in the healthcare system, we see it manifest in the education system. So it's a lot. It really is a lot, and it has this ripple effect where everything is affected in their lives. But another aspect of it that people never look into is the mental health aspect of it, where people actually are affected mentally. Because if you come from a struggling country and you are chased from out there and you run away and you're desperate, you come into another country and again, you still have to face being attacked. You still can't access, education, healthcare systems and stuff. And we've seen incidents of people being chased out of hospitals and things like that. So it really affects a number of aspects in their human rights and in their daily lives, but also the mental health, I think, is very important to highlight because people never look into that. Yeah.
I mean, just go and have a chat to a young Zimbabwean mother sitting with 2 kids outside of Home Affairs anywhere in South Africa.
Yeah.
Just have a little chat and get some perspective on that lived experience. Unfortunately for me, we like to think of our actions as a manifestation of the situation or the system. But it's the other way around. The system exists because we can't change our actions.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you go about, as an organization like Africa Unite, doing this every day?
Yeah.
And we'll get into the motivation as to why it's so important for you, but how do you guys go about this? What do we need to do? What's the roadmap?
I think the biggest thing, and that's what we focus on, is education. But we specifically focus on young people because most of the incidents of xenophobia are perpetrated by young people. So we try then to focus on the young people, but also then to also ensure the future that they can, also hand it down to whoever's coming next. But what we do is then we educate young people. So we have a peer education program, for instance, where we bring together a number of young people from all over Africa. We have an exchange program as well, where we take people from different parts of Africa, even in South Africa. We put them together in what is called a human rights school. So in the human rights school, they learn different concepts and different aspects of, human rights, migration, and the reasons behind that. And then we empower them to go back into their communities, and that is where they're able to educate other people, but also to do whatever it is that they're passionate about in a way that promotes human rights and that promotes, cohesion somehow with migrants and with people from different countries. So it's basically just youth empowerment mostly, and we make sure then we support them throughout. So they go throughout the year doing activities, for instance, information sessions, where they would, host a session with their community. If you, for instance, are based in a church or you are based in a university or wherever. So exactly. Yeah. So even if it's just 15 people, 20 people, you just come together, you talk about pertinent issues, you discuss. Exactly. Yeah. Discuss these difficult conversations.
And you do it every day. And I think that's the key thing here. It's your lived experience of you being this person every day is teaching us more than we could ever say or try to depart. The most important element here is that we do talk. And today is an opportunity to do that. That it's just not going anywhere. The continued discussion around xenophobia will pick up again in just a moment.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. It is your Feel Good Breakfast Show, and we are continuing our conversation. It is a tough one, but we have Leletu here from Human Rights Project Development Officer, and that is from Africa Unite, and we're discussing the state of xenophobia in the country. Now, we've had some interesting discussions, but I think there's still a lot more that we need to unpack. For example, what have been some of the common stereotypes or even some of the misconceptions when it comes to immigrants and refugees that are in South Africa at the moment?
I think the biggest ones from the top of my head would be that they're criminals and that they're here to take our jobs. And obviously that's largely because of the issue that we have of unemployment, of the economy and the state of South Africa. So the biggest ones definitely crime and unemployment, and obviously, yeah.
We can see this, and we were joking about preaching to the choir, because it always feels like when you get a receptive person talking about this, it's because they're on the same page.
Yeah.
We need to kind of kick through those doors, and that says, let's get practical. Let's focus on the areas maybe where it's most prevalent. So where do we need to focus in these social development structures, in doing the work that you're doing? What are the hotspots that we need to focus on so that people who do operate in those areas can look for solutions?
I think the biggest thing, as I've mentioned earlier, is that we need to educate ourselves, but also we need to educate others, especially young people. So in schools, starting from the young age, from younger grades, and at universities, you'd be very surprised that young people also have the stereotypes that we spoke about. And it's very shocking because, from a young person, you'd expect more of an open mind and, more accepting. But we have to educate ourselves. We have to educate young people. We have to educate everyone, especially in areas where people, have a lot of access to media, because that's where the narratives come from. So if we educate people, then the narratives change and people know exactly what, xenophobia is. People know exactly why migrants and refugees are in South Africa. Yeah.
And they can see where the real enemy is in the system.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, education is key. Africa Unite's been starting with the youth programs and how you've approached it. Do you know what have been some of the effective ways in which we can combat xenophobia, but also promote inclusivity and tolerance?
I think one of the biggest things is that we do not understand that we are all the same, especially Africans. And you realize that the xenophobia is towards Africans specifically. So we don't understand that we are all the same. We don't understand that a Zimbabwean is exactly like me as a South African. So educating ourselves in that regard and understanding each other's cultures, understanding each other's ways of doing things, then we're more accepting of others. So when you are aware that this person is exactly like me, you look, for instance, in language. the languages are the same. You look into Shona, you look into Xhosa, there's very similar words. So if people understand all those, they're able to connect in those different ways. So through our cultures, through understanding that although we are diverse, we are actually the same people and we have similar values, similar cultures, and similar customs. So being able to celebrate in our diversity together, I think also creates that sort of openness. That's one of the most effective ways or the most effective things that we've been able to do. So inviting people together, sharing meals, showing each other that, you know, we
Food,
eat...
baby,
Exactly,
food.
exactly. We eat the same
Break bread,
things,
yeah.
very similar things. It's literally in small things like that.
There feels like an opportunity in the space that social media has created.
Yeah.
And with this gap that COVID gave us, there is a generation of young people seeing people who look exactly like them, same age, same sensibilities, same view on the world, that they have never had a connection to, living in another country, and all it took was giving data for people to be able to see themselves represented in a different light. How do we celebrate Africa Day? What's the light here? How do we push ourselves and this conversation into the light? How do we positively feed this narrative?
I think it's just like I said, so we celebrate our diversity together, share meals with each other, you know, dress up, show up, and see how similar we all are and how the same we all are. We're not different at all. So if we come together in spaces like these, we have amakwinya, we have, you know,
Jollof rice, for sure.
you know, then we are able to accept each other and understand each other. So I think that's the starting point, celebrating days like these, not just Africa Day, but, you know, World Refugee Day, for instance, Youth Day, coming together during those times and just sharing those similarities, yeah.
I think for every one of those moments where you wanted to say, just walk a mile in my shoes, before you judge, before you act, before you react, just walk a mile in my shoes. Take a moment to consider someone else's perspective, their life path, what is happening to them right now. It's a lived experience that we all share in, and this Africa Day gives us a beautiful opportunity. You're living it every second of every day, so thank you for being who you are and just being so amazing. We love you, Lilette.
Thank you so
girl.
much. I love you guys too.
Oh, well, it's great having you here. And of course, if you want to be part of this conversation, you're welcome to take it online. We are on Facebook or our WhatsApp line, which is 063 408 8863.